We've talked about the wonderful Peace Corps group we had in Ethiopia, and they certainly had some adventures. And so at this time, we'll call on Warren Barrash, who will be speaking about the central Ethiopia and some of their adventures there. Warren?
Thank you, Dr. Henderson, and also I'd like to thank the organizers and session chairs for a terrific program, and I'd like to acknowledge my co-authors who weren't able to be here, but Peter Carrasco and Louis Kaplan, Sarah de Quadros had distinguished careers in international public health, and Demesgen Gabu, who I hope has had a wonderful life in the time since we were working together in Ethiopia in the 70s. In this talk, what I'd like to do is briefly catch us up on what the status of...
I think you're going to do better speaking into the mic.
Okay.
I think you're speaking a little far away.
Okay.
Be hard to hear.
What the status of Ethiopia, what the status of smallpox eradication was in 1973, when the effort moved a bit from concentration in the regions around the Central Highlands to concentration in the Central Highlands, and talk a bit about what some of the conditions were there that made the work so difficult and also led to the effort to work with a multi-team group in a extended expeditionary approach in a remote small area in Gishe. So smallpox eradication started in 1970 in Ethiopia with initial efforts concentrated in the regions around the Central Highlands. And at that time, Ethiopia really was an empire with a large number of different tribes, different belief systems, different languages, different economies, and they lived in traditional tribal areas and pretty much stayed in those areas. The infrastructure was very minimal, and government services were also quite minimal. But just the same, work on smallpox eradication progressed very rapidly, and smallpox was close to being contained in just a couple of years because the people responded very positively to the smallpox program. So by the middle of 1973, smallpox was largely in the highlands area, and smallpox in other areas was being mopped up, but the incidence was not growing in other areas. And this, so resources, people were being moved into the Central Highlands, particularly the region occupied by the Amhara tribe, and so we're working in the provinces of Begemder and Gojam and Wallo and parts of northern part of Shoa province. The reason that things were difficult in the highlands have to do with the geography, which was rather severe, high plateau and canyon country, mountainous terrain, distributed population, very few roads, and a very traditional culture, very rich culture, admirable in many ways, but also very wary of outsiders, not just Europeans, but people from other districts in the country. And people were very distrustful of people coming with ideas that were not comfortable to them or familiar with them. And so the work went very slowly. We operated in Ethiopia in the same way that you've heard for India and Bangladesh, where, again, active surveillance, find the cases, vaccinate around them, go to markets. Peter Carrasco working a market near the edge of the plateau, get rumors, go to schools, go to church gatherings, and start out with the jet gun injector, again with great support from Ethiopian students that had graduated high school, couldn't get into the university. There were so few seats and weren't any jobs, and they worked great for us. We gave up the jet gun injector fairly early on in '73, but and the bifurcated needle worked quite well. So Louis Kaplan and I were working the plateaus in central portion of Menzenagishe-Oraja, and time came to do a reconnaissance in Gishe across the Getchene Canyon complex, about 4,000 to 5,000 feet deep. Nothing exceptional about that. That's just the way it was. And we were effectively blocked at every turn by the by government officials and local people who had no interest in helping us get around that district. So we left it at that, realized we were going to have to figure out a way to work in that area. Later on, we returned to the highlands and finished up smallpox eradication in those areas. Vince mentioned Cerro de Quadros. He was the supervisor of our work in Shoa province as well as other provinces, and the assistant director for Ethiopia, and did a terrific job. He was quite hands-on and would get out to the field and work with us, so he knew what the conditions were like. And here we are 5 months into working in the district, and we're still finding new cases in areas that we visited 3 and 4 times over that period of time. And the reason is because there's refusal for vaccination, visit other areas right nearby, refusal for vaccination, go to other areas nearby where there are rumors, and the kids are running away. And so it moved pretty slowly. We're in an area that's much smaller than the size of Atlanta, and 2 teams working there for the better part of a year and still getting cases. But just the same, after about 8 or 9 months, by April or so, it appeared that smallpox was contained in the Mamameter plateaus south of Gishe, and it was time to take that one on again. And by then we were thinking of how we would do it, and we broached the idea to Ciro that maybe what we really need to do, because the logistics are so difficult, is go there with a group of teams, self-sufficient, with provisions for a month. Just go there and stay there because it takes so long to get there, and it's so difficult to support yourself when you go. And he supported that. So we gathered together 4 teams. Otto Temesgen, Louis, myself. Peter took this picture, bought horses, mules, donkeys, put together, got muleteers and student vaccinators and provisions for a month, and headed down the canyon, which is the direct route to Gishe on the other side. And for a number of logistical reasons, we had a lot of problems doing that route, and so what we did was we had to return to the plateau, reconfigure some gear, and then work our way around the head of the canyons and the edge of the plateau and enter Gishe from the east instead of the direct way from the south. But more donkeys all along the way, and the weather was a bit of an issue because the summer monsoon was coming on, and at times we had a hard time seeing 5 or 10 feet in front of ourselves, but all of us made it to the edge of the plateau. And then we worked our way around at the top of the escarpment, dropping down to the Rift Valley, and came into Gishe from the east. And finally, a week after getting started, we were working markets and fanning out to find if there were rumors of smallpox or smallpox, and getting on with the work. By map, it looked like this, our staging area. We went down the route to the main route to Gishe, but had to come back, worked our way around the head of the canyons, top of the escarpment, came into Gishe from the east, started working mountain markets and church gatherings, fanned out, went to other areas, worked markets, fanned out, and so forth. And after a few weeks then, we started to see cases and hear more rumors about smallpox at the edge of the plateau and down in the canyon area. And so we decided to split up into teams to work the canyons, and then work back in the other parts of the plateau, meet at the far ends of the district at the end of a week or so, and then head back. And that's what we did. Found a number of cases, a lot of resistance, but did what we could as far as getting vaccination started. And then there were more rumors of cases in another part of the canyon, so we split up again, coming back to return. So that was a month's worth of work and kind of what it looked like. And again, this is very similar to what was going on in other parts of the plateau, workers in the other provinces, the only difference being that this was a sustained effort because of the remoteness of the region. And so, yeah, again, working the canyons, this is where there were cases, and in many cases, in many places, people were refusing the vaccination, and variolation was also being practiced. So we didn't think that we probably eliminated smallpox in this trip. We probably had a good idea of where the cases were and where they weren't. Got started on vaccination, but the kind of laid the groundwork and justified the ideas of bringing in helicopters to help with surveillance in the areas that were very difficult to get to, and with the perseverance of the on-the-ground teams and helicopters working in some of the more resistant or difficult areas to access, then of course smallpox was eradicated from Ethiopia. And like others as well, really it was the help of the student teams that really made it possible to be effective in the field. And I'd like to pay a tribute to the ones that worked with us regularly, Ali and Kadir and Bafakaru and Getahun and Tarku, and these guys were great. And so
thank you very much, and my apologies. I should have noted that Warren is a professor of water geology and from Boise, Idaho, so that I would think he probably got acquainted with a little bit of water of an unusual type in Ethiopia. But I think it's an illustration of how this was just again a fantastic set of problems. And then once they killed the emperor and we had the army to deal with and two other civil wars going on, which were apart from the Marxists taking over the government, it really became very exciting in Ethiopia. And again, we wondered if we would ever make it. But we did, finally.